I'm sorry that you're mostly all figured out. That's all I got. Has anyone else listened to Miley Cyrus's new album, Endless Summer Vacation? Because it's a good one. It's a good one. And do you know what else is good? Today's episode. I already know it. We haven't even recorded it yet. I already know this is going to be one of the top listens. I just know. This person on the podcast today has been mentioned a few times. I think he probably knows how many times. I think he's kept a tally. Today, I'm going to intro him as our resident gay best friend. He's my best friend, not because he's gay, but because I just really love him. And that's great. So everyone, please welcome Alex Hamberger to the podcast.
Woo! Doing my own round of applause. Thank you to the studio audience. There is none.
No.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Alex.
We are sharing one microphone.
Yep. We're sharing one mic, which we've been in this position before. And it usually ends in a fight. So buckle up, everyone. You're about to hear from two people who love each other so much that they also hate each other a lot. Do you know what? It's funny because you brought up your friend Edmund recently. And I remember when one of the first times I met Edmund, he talked about the slap story, like your first fight, the slap story. Do you recall this?
I'm so sorry. I do recall the slap. There was a slap.
Yeah.
There was a slap in the parking lot of a Walmart.
Yeah.
For sure. I think we were still in high school. We were the most boring high school students. We just our parents would let us be out till 2 a.m. because they knew we weren't doing going to parties. We were just literally going to Walmart and Wegmans. And I think one night something happened and there was a slap. I think it's good. I don't remember
Yeah. You've moved past
the full details. I think I probably slapped him. Maybe that's why I've shut it out of my mind. I'm not sure. I can't be sure. Yeah, that's that story. The end.
If I had to guess, that was great. So far, it's starting off really well. If I had to guess, I would say you absolutely were the slapper. Edmund probably said something that deserved a slap. Sorry, Edmund.
You may well have.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today anyway. So today, like I said, Alex is going to be all of our gay best friend, and he is going to educate us. So there is a lot happening right now in the world of folks who identify as LGBTQ plus, and it's not good. It's not good. And frankly, if you're like me, you may feel a little overwhelmed by a lot of things right now, and so you haven't been able to keep up on what's going on, which is also a privilege because I don't identify as LGBTQ plus. At least I don't right now. And no, but for real. And so I have the privilege of not having to feel directly impacted, even though people who I love very, very much are. So I, to be honest, have not kept up on it as much as I should. So Alex is here today to kind of give us an idea of the climate and what the situation is like, and we're going to have a discussion about it. So hopefully everyone still loves each other by the end of this. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to be great. So Al, let's just start with the basics of what's happening. And I'll be honest with you, another area, another area that I am very deficient in is in understanding the way government works. Frankly, I am very deficient there. It feels understanding the government feels very similar to understanding finances to me. It's terrifying because I just do not get it. And I don't know where to go to figure out how to get it for either of those things, because it feels like if I pick the wrong one, they could be lying to me, and I don't. So I just feel very confused and very scared by all of it. So let's talk like real basics, and I might have some follow-up questions for you.
Sounds good. Well, happy to be here. And yes, Emily and I talked about that. Happy to be everyone's little gay best friend here. You know, a lot of you on the podcast listeners, I'm sure, have your own LGBTQ friends. But if you don't, I can be yours. Or if you do and you have...
You can't.
Oh, sorry.
No, you can't.
I'm only Emily's friend.
Just mine.
I have one friend. Her name is Emily. But so just happy to kind of share my perspectives from here. And I wanted to, you know, say at the top, this is a lot of this is just me following along as a citizen and a member of the LGBTQ community. So I am not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a professional advocate. But I just thought it would be, you know, maybe helpful to kind of just share the perspective of what it's like to be someone in the community right now. And with that, I'm happy to also identify myself. I just identify as gay. So of the LGBTQ acronym, just the one, just the G for me. I'm a cisgendered man, which means I was assigned male at birth and I identify as male. And I say that as well, just to also say that I'm not coming from a place of speaking as a trans person, but as someone who's a member of that community and trying to be the fiercest ally I can be, particularly for the trans members of our community right now, because as you mentioned, and I'll talk about this, you know, now for a second, but there in recent years has been a growing onslaught of legislation in particular that's targeting the LGBTQ community. Certainly discrimination throughout the society has been never gone. But whereas people may have thought we were sort of entering this new day and like the maybe late 2010s, all of a sudden marriage equality was passed in 2015 federally, and that seemed really great. And there was this other case that people may not have heard about called Bostock v. Clayton County in 2020 that was passed, and that enshrined sexual orientation and gender identity into the equal rights protection. So to some observers, it might look like, oh, look, progress is being made. Like we're taking steps forward and things are getting better. But sort of ironically or coincidentally, I think that increased visibility has then heightened a lot of the pushback and fear that's driving a lot of this and is leading to what is right now just a horrible onslaught of legislation targeting the LGBTQ community. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, right now is tracking 420 active cases across state legislatures across the country that are in some way trying to limit or take away the rights of LGBTQ people, especially trans people. 420 active bills this session. Wow. And these are things, you know, some things folks may have heard of, such as bathroom bills, right, that are trying to limit what bathrooms individuals can use in public places. Something that's been very high profile the last year or two in particular has been women's and girls sports. So a lot of hubbub about, you know, trans women participating in women's and girls sports, which is based on, I mean, a lot of this, in my opinion, is based on lies and fear. Mm-hmm. It's actually just super lovely for your trans girl to play on the girls' soccer team if that's where she wants to play. I think that's great. And guess what? She's 8. So right. Would be super great for her to be with her friends that she wants to play with. So some of those things which seem a little bit more social, there are some, you know, insidious things under those. But there's been a recent escalation, especially this legislative session, where now healthcare is coming under attack as well. Again, I think a lot of fear and misinformation. I think people hear medical care for trans youth and just start picturing all sorts of things in their heads, which don't just picture things in your heads. Actually, maybe, you know, go learn something, find some information. Hopefully I can bring some of that to you today. But it's actually even that, right? And a lot of this has been like, well, we're just going to do this. Well, we're just thinking about this. Well, we're just sort of, and a lot of it started with like children. We're just going to try to protect children. That's all we're doing. But some of these latest bills right now, I believe the bill in Oklahoma, you can fact check me on this, folks, but I believe the bill in Oklahoma in addition to trying to ban medical care for transgender youth, is also in its language banning medical care for transgender adults. So basically, any transgender individual living in the state of Oklahoma, again, I'm not sure if the bill passed or not, but is going to have this right to medical care and health care taken away through both public providers as well as private providers as well. So
just any type of medical care.
I think particularly it's like the gender affirming care and things related to the healthcare that is sort of tied to that. Again, I don't know all the specifics, but these are the types of things that we're seeing now, coming across in state legislatures. Like, these are very real. And then they are, of course, it's the state legislation turns into public sentiment. And so it isn't just that this piece of legislation, which is, going to become a law and will have an actual impact on someone's life from the way that a law is written. It's then also spilling over into just the social community feeling, and people all of a sudden being like, well, what is this? And I haven't heard of this before. And now this maybe does sound bad. And what's going on? And so a lot of this fear and misinformation and things are really kind of all coming together at once. And this attack is just, it's just not great. It's just actually, I would say it's bad would be a word that I would use to describe it.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing us up to speed on all of this. It is really upsetting. What would you say is the best way? And this is, I think this is a question that many of us think of all the time, but what is the best way for us as allies to be good allies and to be supportive, especially of our trans brothers and sisters and non-binary folks right now?
It's something that I am trying to learn as well, as an ally as well to the trans members of the LGBTQ community. And I often have trouble finding the right answer for myself, because I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, who do I call to say, hey, this is horrible? Or how do we, like, this horrible stuff is just happening. What can we do? So there's more answers out there that I don't have right now. It's tough when you live, because I think technically you're not supposed to call legislatures unless you live there. So in terms of that advocacy, I may have dialed a lawmaker in Arkansas once or twice, to be honest. But, kind of the big buckets. One is you can call legislators. So if you happen to live in a municipality or a state or a city where this type of legislation is going through, absolutely, call the legislators. I think people don't realize this. You can do this kind of public service, public advocacy 101. You can call your representatives anytime about anything, particularly when a bill might be coming up. But at any time, you can call them and say, hey, I support this. Hey, I don't support that. And believe it or not, a lot of the staffers that you call, you probably think what's my one call going to do? But a lot of times they will be keeping literal tallies on the phone to be like, all right, 50 people called and said they love this bill, and 100 people called and said they hated it, and they will pass it on to the legislature. So it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So if you happen to be someone that's living in one of these areas right now where these bills are going through, definitely call your legislator, call your representatives. You can always find their numbers online. It's easy to do. You are most likely going to be speaking to a staffer who's 24, and just their job is just to pick up the phone and hear you go, hi, I'm so-and-so from this place, and I would I'm against this bill. And they go, great, thanks, have a good day. Mm-hmm. So it's not scary at all. Mm-hmm. So that's a big thing. What I try to do, because I live in New York City, so I live in a place where, there isn't legislation currently going to attack members of the LGBTQ community. So I don't have that sort of local advocacy in my hometown. But something I'm also doing is donations to some different various groups. So some advocacy groups. The Okra Project is one that I think a lot of people heard about, especially in the wake of 2020. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I can give you these links to all these, but there's the Trans Umbrella Project is one that I donate to as well. I didn't think to look through all of them. They're all through my automatic payment every month, and they just get taken out, which is really great.
Very nice. Well, you can link to all of them.
We sure can.
Yeah.
So that's a way to do it as well. I would say the other thing that I would recommend, and this is, getting into, some of the other parts I want to talk about, but just following the leaders in the fight. One person in particular that I take a lot of inspiration from is Chase Strangio. He's a lawyer for the ACLU. He's trans himself, and he has I've been following him for quite a few years, and seeing him through, the increased rise in these bills throughout the years. But he is so plugged into all the activists that are on the ground. And so he is constantly posting and reposting tweets from the local groups that are in Arkansas, that are in Alabama, that are in the places where the worst of this legislation is going through right now. And they will have kind of calls to action to be able to give donations, again, not to just like a big, quote unquote, big nonprofit, but to these like groups that are right there on the ground who that money that you give them will allow them to be another day at the state capitol rallying and making their voices heard and things like that. Someone's voice was heard.
It's the man delivering our Indian food. Hold that thought. And we're back with our Indian food waiting for us, and I'm very excited about it. Now, but back to the real talk here. So here's a question for you. So it can be very overwhelming and very depressing and spiral inducing to think about all of the people out there who support this legislation like that, right? And who have this fear of the unknown and think that it means that we need to, quote, eradicate it, right? Do you think that... See, I get overwhelmed when I think of very like big projects that are going to take a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of people. It makes me feel very overwhelmed. But do you think there is value in trying to reach people on the grassroots level to educate them? Or do you feel like what's the point with most of these people because their mind is, they're receiving information from a source you know, and from an unnamed source, and it's Fox News, and, you know, and they're being fed this information. Is there any point in trying to reach people like that and having conversations like that? And this is something I talked to Harper Bishop, who I had on the podcast a few months back now, and he really believes in the value of that, but also he has really fine-tuned, I think, the skill of having these difficult conversations and leaving space for people to say what I feel are very ignorant things. And it's very hard for me to just like accept those things and then continue the conversation without like erupting in flames. So do you feel like there's still a point to trying to have conversations with people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum as far as what they think about this, or no, I don't know, or not?
I think there's no point, and it's all over, and everyone should listen to this podcast and then just shut it down, because this is it. This is the day. No, this is going to be a little bit more of like a say as I do, do as I say, not as I do. That's what I meant. Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. I think we have to believe that there is a point, because I think if we don't, which I'll be honest, for a while I haven't, then I kind of don't know where it leaves us. And this is true, obviously, on a lot of different topics, not just this topic. But what's funny about this topic and this issue is I find it very, I was going to say insulting, but I don't want to be too inflammatory. But the word that came to mind was insulting. To consider like the LGBTQ issue as an issue. I'm like, what's the issue? Like, it's not like we're not deciding what should the tax rate be, 15% or 18%, and you can each sort of have an opinion. I've said this in context about sort of politics more generally, you know, and because things get swept into politics that to me feel like they aren't political, they just are, right? I mean, I as a gay person, in a sense, I don't care what you think about the issue of gay, because it's like, no matter what you think, I'm still here, you know, like you don't get to decide, even though I think the most insidious people do think that there would be a way to like get rid of them, but that's very horrible. And I don't think that's the majority of people. But when it sort of gets framed as sort of this issue, I think that already is maybe not the right way to think about it. And what I kind of keep coming back to more and more recently, especially as I'm hearing other people on this topic, because we're in a very polarized moment on a number of topics, and people are, there's this term I learned not long ago called calcification, meaning just people's like opinions are not only polarized but also like calcified. It's like very hard to move people, and it's sort of this idea that people are more on the ends. But I guess rather than accept that to be true, I think what I distill this down to, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just the concept of empathy. And I think it's worth trying to reach people just to sort of have some of those conversations and just kind of like close your eyes, person whom you're talking to. What do you know about yourself? What are you sure of? And it's particularly if it's a person who identifies as straight or cisgendered, like think back, is there ever a moment, that you questioned your gender or questioned your sexual orientation? And I mean, depending on the answer, the conversation will go a number of ways, but I think for many of those people, the answer might just be no. And then to sort of say, now imagine that you like were a transgender person and you had that experience, and you closed your eyes and you just really knew, right? Like, because you really know. Mm-hmm. Don't you think other people also just really know? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so there's something there where it's just sort of trying to tap into not just like, let's pull up the latest fact sheet and go point by point and let me tell you why this is wrong and that's wrong and where'd you get that source. But in particular, I mean, the quote unquote issue of LGBTQ rights and all of it is just like, you got to remember that there's people at the center of this. And something recently that happened was the Republican governor from Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, did a town hall on CNN, I think earlier this week. And one of the people that asked a question in the audience was a young transgender man named Nico. He was 17 years old, and he got up and he said, "Governor, I'm Nico. I'm a transgender man. Do you really think someone like me should be, using the locker room and the restroom as the girls at my school?" And to watch Glenn Youngkin's just like, I don't want to be too critical, but you just could see in that moment that he was like, uh-oh, here I am, like actually now talking to this young transgender man who, is presenting by society's versions of, he's in a button-down blue shirt, short cropped hair. Like Nico is presenting as a young man, as our society would. And you could just see Glenn Youngkin just sort of being like, oh shoot, all this stuff I've been saying that's been theoretical or, just behind these closed doors, like, doesn't really make a lot of sense now because I don't actually think Nico should be using the girls' bathroom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and because the trans community as well makes up such a smaller proportion of the population than, any other groups, even less than gay people, I think there is just sort of this unknown, and so many people don't know a trans person. I just saw a clip today from Peppermint, who's another person that I follow who I love. She's a drag performer. She's trans, and she said that 80% of people say that they don't know a transgender person. And I think when that's the case, I believe that very well may be the case, but it just allows like the boogeymanification then of people, and I think that's sort of what the issue is. One of the reasons that the tide turned on rights for gay and lesbian people was because once we were allowed to be a little bit more just like, yes, hi, actually, we're here. And then people were like, oh, I know one. Oh, it turns out I met one, And all of a sudden it was like, oh, my cousin or my son or my friend. Like, yeah, wait, oh, maybe I do think they should get to live the same life that I get to live. So once that momentum happens, it's kind of unstoppable. But I think at this moment with trans representation and non-binary folks and people that are gender nonconforming in any way, it's just likely that the majority of people may not have met someone or may not have known that they met someone is a key part there. And so they just, in that void, are getting these, either coming up with their own ideas or listening to other people. And so to your question, which you asked 100 hours ago, I do think it's worth, in some level, trying to have these conversations, because if we don't, then the horrible stuff is just going to win out. And I think if we're not telling these stories, if we're not amplifying them, if we're not, hearing from members of the community and doing everything we can to support them in all the ways that we can, even imperfectly, even if we don't know what that looks like. I think that is a disservice. So it's big. I'm with you. I feel the crushing weight of of modern day society for so many different reasons. But I think we have to believe that, there's going to be some better days ahead, and that if everybody stood up, I mean, if everybody, even those that haven't had the privilege of meeting someone who's transgender, gender nonconforming, like, just finds it in their heart to be like, oh, but they're a human person, and I therefore think they should be treated well, and can just communicate that to your legislature, even if you're not advocating for a specific, like, and we need this new, just be like, hey, I think we shouldn't be discriminating against them. Hey, I think we shouldn't be not allowing them to have health care. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a help. It's not a perfect answer, I know, but that's all I got.
Can you give us some resources or places that we can go to learn more and to stay informed beyond this podcast?
Well, I think this podcast is always number one. I think come here for all of your LGBTQ news, tips, news. You should be doing news bulletins.
I should.
I think that's something that should be incorporated into the podcast.
And actually, I took the microphone back. I'm going to toot my own horn for a minute because this is episode 28. We did the math the other day. I can't remember.
Are you going to be outing anybody about this?
Am I going to be outing anybody? I don't think so. No. Oh, that is a thought. Okay, but at least half of the people on my podcast, I'll let you figure out who, are in the LGBTQ plus community. And that feels really great. And actually, did we also figure out, well, this would out people, so I won't say this. I feel, cultivate diverse relationships, and because that is the best way to learn, I think, is by just being friends and in community with people who are different than you, because what's better than learning from people who are right in front of you? Okay, you can proceed.
So basically, if you've been on the podcast, you're queer. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You might be. Some of you are.
Could be.
Some of us are. Not everybody, but no, I appreciate the question. And yeah, I think to the point that I was saying before, when you're not familiar with something, when you're not interacting with something, it can be hard to sort of understand it. I mean, listen, who's a perfect person on this podcast? Certainly not me. It's Emily. So Emily's the perfect one. I'm the not perfect one. But I'll, out myself in a different way here. Before really the most recent racial justice rallying cries in 2020, I was probably floating through life a little too blissfully unaware as a white person. And it was a reckoning for a lot of people, and I'll admit it was, a reckoning for me, that I just started to be like, okay, time to actually pay the fuck attention. And one of the good pieces of information that I got and advice from various people was part of being an ally is actually taking on some responsibility yourself, and not burdening the people that are in whatever marginalized group may be at the time to educate you. Don't go to your closest person that's in that group and be like, you have to tell me everything and what can I do? But how can you as the ally take some of that burden off, so that folks don't have to always be their own advocates 100% of the time. And the same is true with the LGBTQ community. So with that, I started just on social media following a lot of Black creators and people, just entertainers, and from different parts of society, and just that was just such a great thing to be like, oh look, here's someone that's a plant queen, and here's someone just to broaden your perspective. And I think the same can be true for the LGBTQ community. So I have a few things to recommend to the listeners. First of all, for some social media follows, so I did mention Chase Strangio. I definitely yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. We'll link it in this. I'm also the producer of the podcast, executive editor, designer.
None of this is true. This is all a lie.
So as the head writer of the podcast.
No.
So Chase Strangio, he's incredible. And yeah, definitely give him a follow. I mentioned Peppermint as well. Peppermint, she was contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race season 9, I believe. And she's just a really wonderful drag performer. She's a trans activist. She actually is very close with the family. I just know her name is Jazz. Jazz is that teenage that had that show on TLC. Yeah, Peppermint's like real good friends with Jazz's brother. So like Peppermint and Jazz's brother, I don't know his name, sorry, are just always like making videos. So Peppermint's a good follow. And then even, I'm not going to give her name. One, I don't remember it, but two, like not to like out this person, but I just at some point started following this trans radiologist on Twitter. You know, she's not a Twitter personality. She's just a radiologist, and she was going through a transition. And again, just to see that is just like, here is just a person living her life, sharing her stories. Her things are like, look at this cute new dress I got. Like, just incredible, right? Just so humanizing. And so even just get out there and whoever you just find the normies, find the normie trans people and just follow them just to see like, oh, look, trans people are actually just like us because we are what? All humans. So that's a good one. I also recommend, so Matt XIV is a good follow. He's a 20, I believe he uses he, they pronouns, but great creator. He always putting together great things that are shareable on Instagram. So like him. And then Brian Derrick is another one. So he's gay. He's not trans. But he's very into the political stuff and legislative stuff. It's not always about LGBTQ, but I thought of him because he yesterday just posted a lot of these stats that I just shared on this podcast. And he gives you good advice as well, like what to do, how to engage with legislatures. So he's really, really excellent. So beyond social media follows, I also have a few pieces of pop culture. And this gets to another quick point I want to make. All my points are quick. Just kidding. This is a 5-hour-long podcast.
And also, your speaking is as quick as possible. You're like, if there was a tortoise and a hare, you'd be the hare. You're already gone. We can't see you. Just a cloud of dust. So just slow down a little bit.
All right, everyone. You're not listening to this on 1.5 speed. This is just my speed. But, so a quick point I wanted to make. A slow point I will make instead is, again, for anyone either listening or in your life that is having this feeling that like, oh my gosh, I think I've never heard of trans people before. This feels like it's pretty new. Like, where did this come from? Is this a fad? You know, quick answer, no. Trans people, non-binary people, queer people have been around since the dawn of history. I meant to look this up. I didn't. So here's a half of a fact. And you can all refute me on this. But my understanding is that there are particular cultures around the world where for years, you know, there have been just accepted either third genders or the concept of transgender, even if it wasn't called that. I do know this is a fun fact. Partially a fun fact. You can drag me in the comments. It's totally fine if I'm getting these things wrong. These things might just be partially true. But particularly in Canada and some other places, you might hear the acronym LGBTQIA2S. And 2S stands for Two Spirit. And that is a concept from, I believe, indigenous cultures, native cultures, where, again, it was these individuals who were clearly identifying as not male, not female, but yet this sort of like two-spirit individual, and were actually highly regarded. And because it was sort of like, wow, you're not just one thing, you're two things. Again, many apologies if I'm saying that a little bit incorrectly, but that's the two S's for two spirit. And so not only have trans people been around forever, in some cases they've actually been fortunately celebrated and recognized for being special and contributing in unique ways that are beneficial to their society. So no, trans people didn't just come out of thin air 4 years ago and come to ruin your lives, I promise you. And to that end, I think if you want to look back a little bit into some pop culture things and understand too, you know, with drag and where that came from and the roots that it has. Actually, drag has a lot of roots in the trans culture. It's not just gay men. A lot of people might think that drag culture is just gay men dressing up as women. There are women that dress up as men. There are non-binary people. And a couple things I will recommend to you. One is the Netflix documentary called Disclosure. It came out in 2020. I just remembered about it earlier the other day. I watched it in 2020. Has some names you'll know like Laverne Cox and Chaz Bono, but really does a walkthrough of trans representation in pop culture and media. So that's like a really good one to kind of get a chance to see. But then if you want to look back a little bit further, so this will be a bit of a advanced level for some folks, but I just watched it the other night in preparation for doing this. But it's the documentary Paris is Burning. It's from 1990. If you watch Drag Race enough, RuPaul mentions it at least once a season. But it looks into ballroom culture, and ballroom culture was really popular, particularly among transgender people in New York, particularly Black transgender people, particularly Black trans women. Ball culture is, oh God, I feel like I don't want to define it because I'm not part of that community. But if you watch the documentary, you'll get a sense of it. And you will see different versions of that in more recent things on TV, such as Pose. So the series that was on, I'm just your worst guest with no information. We'll say FX. I don't know. But Pose is really good. Billy Porter's in it. And stars just an incredibly queer cast. And if you ever watch Paris is Burning and then you watch Pose, you're like, oh, I got it. They're really basing this off of this. So they're showing the ball culture, which, is really how, where a lot of queer people found each other, particularly in the 80s, particularly in New York, when they were so marginalized from the real world. Sorry, not the real world, but like mainstream society. So that's a really good one. And then another show. So once you get into ball culture and understand the different houses and all the competitions and things, Legendary on HBO. It's like a reality competition show. It's so fun. It just got canceled after its third season, but if you can find Legendary, it's just an amazing, amazing way to just see like queer joy. I mean, a lot of shade. The judge, La Roche, is not very forgiving with his comments, but just watching it is just, I mean, you will love it. Oh, and then the last one, I forgot about this, and it's coming to my mind right now. I'm talking so fast.
You're speaking so fast.
The show We're Here, also on HBO. Is HBO sponsoring the podcast? They should be, because every show I'm mentioning is on HBO. It's We're Here. It is a newer series. It stars basically 3 queens who rose to fame on RuPaul's Drag Race. And they go into sort of smaller rural towns across America and work with folks in the queer community. It's somewhat a la Queer Eye, but a little bit different. What they do is they work with them and then they put on a drag performance in the town. And those stories are just... I mean, you can ask my husband. I usually end up crying, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I don't think so, but I think that's actually okay," because particularly just hearing these stories, meeting these people. If you really want to meet real queer people who are living literally everywhere, that's not a threat. It's just true. We're Here is just unbelievable, and if you have anyone in your life again that just thinks like someone might meet a trans person and become trans, or someone, all these things that are just not true. When you get to see these individuals who they have on the show, you're just like, it's so moving. It's so inspirational. We should probably watch an episode after this. Yeah, folks, you can watch along, but I cannot recommend it highly enough. There's been so many times that I was like, I want to send this to everybody. It's been very uplifting as a queer person. And I think for even allies to, just see it is really wonderful. So I'd recommend those.
Thank you. Everyone take a breath. Take a deep breath.
I haven't yet.
No, this was really, really wonderful and really informative and really helpful. And thank you, because I know you put a lot of effort into this episode and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to have you again. So we'll probably have, we'll have Alex on again. He'll be a regular occurrence. Alex stopped drinking the wine. I continued to drink the wine. One of us cares about this podcast. I'm just kidding. I care about this podcast a lot. But I obviously relied very heavily on him, which is what we do as cisgender white women. But now we're gonna switch.
Let's do it.
We're gonna switch into some fun rapid fire. Let's see. Let me find my little rapid fire questions. Now, do you want the long form?
Yes, I want all of them.
You want all of them. I figured you would.
And I'll try
Okay.
to be rapid about them.
Will you?
No.
You won't be fast. Let's be honest. All right. Okay, rapid fire. First question. Healthy habit you always stick to.
I don't think the word always can ever be used for me. But the healthy habit that I am the most consistent about is I do not bring my cell phone into the bedroom. I charge it somewhere else. So I don't fall asleep scrolling. And when I get up, I don't just pick it up and stay in bed. I have to get up and go get it. The number one thing that people say to me when I say that is like, well, what do you use for an alarm? That's how people talk to me. They say, what do you use? Everyone I know speaks like that. So first of all, know that. And I say, an alarm clock. I've always had an alarm clock. And so I just use an alarm clock. So phone, it's just really nice. It's just, I think it helps my mind like set down a little bit. No light on the eyes. So that's the one that I'm best at.
That's a very good one. I really like that a lot. I need to get an alarm clock because I use that excuse, especially, well, my alarm clock really is Eli. His name is Eli Louie. He stands at the gate and he says, Mama. So really, I really could just put my phone somewhere else. I should do that. Healthy habit you are trying to implement.
Oh, I forgot that was one of these. So many that I want to. If I'm honest, I'm not trying. It's been a hard 3 years. The pandemic was really tough.
What about walking?
I'm actually, well, I am implementing that. I've been very good about like getting in a daily walk. So that was a pandemic. I know Tanner talked about that on your show that resonated with me. Tanner, call back to you. I was like, I also picked up pandemic walks like millions of other people. But that's a good one. But now that I'm officially through my COVID illness, we did that together.
We did.
We sure did.
We didn't mention that.
We didn't. Emily, who had COVID last week, I also had COVID last week. Guess where we got it. But one of my big fears has been going to the gym in New York City with COVID. I did a couple times. I'd wear my mask, like just like huffing and sweating, and just like everyone's looking at me, and I'm looking at me like, what are you doing here? So now that I've got some little antibodies, I've thought about it. When I get back to the city, I want to like go back to the gym. That's what I want to do.
There you go.
So that's what I will do, just to get the motion that's important to me.
Yes, if you can believe it, Alex was the only person left that hadn't had COVID yet, and he got it here in Buffalo, New York, everyone.
At your house?
At my house. I'm pretty sure you got it at my house. And he's still alive. Look at that. What a treat. Really, I did it on purpose so that you would be here longer.
Appreciate it.
That's what it was. Nonprofit you love and support.
Keeping with the theme of what we talked about today, I participated last year in what was truly an amazing event with the LGBT Center of New York. It's been around for 40 years in New York, doing all the things you would expect an LGBT center to do in New York, doing community programs and helping with vaccination clinics and education and being there to help people who are going through tough times, maybe if they're unhoused as a result of being LGBTQ. But they do this 3-day bike ride from Boston to New York, and I volunteered as a crew member, and it was just, I think especially at the point in time that it was in the pandemic after I'd been like locked up for quite a while, to just be surrounded by a community. And I didn't really know anybody, but just like being in a room full of mostly queer people and doing this event was, the word I used all weekend was like, this is just so joyful. Like this is just, and I just hadn't felt like that in so long. And so they're just an incredible organization. That event is so fun. It takes place in September if anyone's interested. I don't know if I can go because I think I have a work event this year, which is very sad, but TBD. But yeah, the LGBT Center of New York, excellent. Love them. The event, so fun.
Favorite thing that you make?
An event production spreadsheet. Oh, I've been waiting to say this on the podcast for so long. So Emily, we didn't talk about this this time, but I'm an event planner, much like your regular host. I, as your step-in co-host, promoting myself, also an event planner. And when it's so, the most satisfying thing is when you're working with a planning committee of folks who might be a little bit frazzled, might be doing this for the first time. Unbeknownst to them, I have my 12 tab Excel with vendor names and phone numbers, the full schedule. You can filter it by your own name based on assignment. I print them out for everybody. And when you get to that point in the planning process, when someone goes, wait a second, did we? And I go, it's right here. And they go, wait, but did we also? I go, the whole menu's right here too. Everything's here. Guess where it is? It's right here. So doing that chiefly it's for my own, sanity when I'm on site. So I know I have everything. But the way people are just like, did you discover the meaning of life? I was like, I did. And I put it in the spreadsheet. So now you have it. So it's just so satisfying. I mean, I do so many things in Excel, but my event production worksheet is just, I love it so much.
Why haven't you shared it with me yet?
Nope. It's $10,000.
Okay, no. Go to night out drink.
Ooh, bourbon. Anything with bourbon. I like a classic cocktail, the Manhattan, an old fashioned. I've learned that whatever those. Oh, not a fan for you. 50% of the people on this podcast like a Manhattan or an old fashioned. That's true. But some of like the newer cocktails, whatever those like, I don't know if it's bitters or like the liqueurs or things. Whenever there's a fancy cocktail with like 8 ingredients and 7 of them I know and like, and then there's one that I don't know the name of, I'm like, that's gonna make it taste real bitter. So I've learned I don't like the newer craft cocktails. I'm like just kind of a classic one.
He's a classic man. You can be clean when you look this mean. I don't know. Favorite mantra or affirmation?
Everybody breathe. This is a bit of an inside one for me and Emily, but just like the everybody breathe. We used to say that to each other all the time when we worked together. And it's just, it's so many things. One, we all know that like the power of breath is important, but also it sort of just instantly gives you perspective on whatever the moment is, particularly if it's like a silly work stressor. When you just, you kind of get hyped going. Now I don't, so I'm never rambling or talking too fast, as we all know. But whenever you're in that moment and you're just so focused on whatever that thing is, when someone else in particular or you yourself have the presence of mind to say, everybody breathe. And just like, it just instantly makes you feel like that tiny dot in the universe, like, oh, this thing is literally important to nobody except how important I'm making it right now. So the everybody breathe is a good one.
It's so funny because I forgot that we would do that. And you said it and I was like, I used to say that all the time.
That's where it came from. It came from you.
Really did. I would just say, everybody breathe. Everybody breathe. And I think I actually got it from my friend Ashley. Shout out to Ashley Rupp. It's not her last name anymore. Regling is her new last name.
Give her whole life story.
My girl. She's about to have another baby.
Oh, wow.
3 of them.
This is a lot of information.
3.
People will now find her online. You doxed her.
It's good because I think she's selling nail stuff.
Oh, great.
Go buy nail stuff from her. Podcast you highly recommend. There's only one right answer.
Is it mostly all figured out?
Yep. That's it. No. What else do you have?
Mostly all figured out. So most of my podcasts are news related, which is not good for my like news obsession, which you and I have talked about. But I am going to recommend a news podcast. It's called What a Day. It's from the company Crooked Media. They have a bunch of different podcasts that I listen to. I like a lot of them. But What a Day I would recommend on this one. It is a daily news podcast. It's usually 22 minutes. Comes out every weekday morning. But they give you the news because it's mostly really bad stuff, right? Usually like, here's the news. Guess what? It was bad. But the hosts are really fun. There's a lot of comedy that's infused into it. I like that the 4 hosts are all people of color. Women are non-binary. There's queer representation. So it's just a really great like group of folks. I really feel like they're my friends. I was like, what if I ran into them? I would probably pretend that I know them because I listen to them every single morning. But it's really nice. It's very manageable. It's easy to kind of get the news in that way. And they always have some kind of a joke or something. So they'll make you feel a little less bad than if you just read the article on your own and then cried. They'll either cry with you or they'll make a little joke about it and makes you feel a little better. So what a day.
I love that. That's great. I'm absolutely going to add that to my routine here. All the music in the world is gone, except for the music from one artist or band. Who would you pick?
Nat King Cole.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I knew that answer as soon as you asked it on the first episode of the podcast. I love jazz in general. Mm-hmm. And there is just again, here I am being like, have you ever heard of Nat King Cole? Who is this new artist? People who know Nat King Cole, obviously, like very well beloved, but just something about his voice Oh my God. I mean, I know it was because of all the smoking, so that's not great that he had that sultry voice. I don't know if that's a rumor, but that's what people say. But also in particular, there's like one of my dad's favorite songs is one of a Nat King Cole, That Sunday, That Summer. So whenever I hear that song, I always think of my dad. But it's just, and his Christmas album like is just classic. And yeah, I mean, literally that when I heard that question for the first time 28 episodes ago, I was like, oh, that's the one.
I love that. And it's funny you say that about your dad too, because the Nat King Cole song Unforgettable always makes me think of my dad, because we danced to that at a father-daughter dance at good old Holy Angels Academy. And so whenever I hear it, I always think of my dad. That's sweet. What is a hobby or interest you have that you think most people wouldn't know about you?
Roller coasters. Listen, as I've been planning for this podcast for years, that was one that it took me a while to think of, because if you can believe it, based on how fast I talk, I'm pretty much an open book. So there's not a lot. My hobbies are things that people would be like, no way, you love Broadway? Was a surprise to no one. Jill Fetcher talked about my tap dancing affinity, which I have been going to tap dance classes. You painted me as a non-tap dancer. Yeah, writing the record. We're doing a correction, a redaction. But no, I say roller coasters because for a short while, Instagram started just serving me up roller coaster like videos. Something happened in the algorithm. But I also, I mean, as a kid, I would used to go on like a Cedar Point's website and just like watch the animations from like 2006, which were not good. And I had like that roller coaster building like computer game. You'd like send people. I think that's the one that I had. Yeah. So I just I love riding them. And I just think that's something that people would know. And I thought I had something else to say. Oh, yeah. So Instagram was giving me those ads for a while, but then don't worry, it went back to shirtless men. So Instagram was like, wait a second, this is what he wants. And underwear ads.
And underwear ads. Yeah. Perfect. I won't say what's Instagram's telling me lately. A favorite place you've ever visited?
I've been so very, very fortunate, privileged, blessed to do a lot of traveling, but my answer to this question is always Prague, in the Czech Republic. And because it's just like a beautiful, wonderful city, nicknamed the Paris of the East. I did not know that until I got there, and I went, this is a very beautiful city. People said, it's the Paris of the East, and I said, that's a good name for it. But it actually was, and this won't surprise you, but it was, I think, one of the big first international like cities that I did on my own. It was part of another trip. I was with some other friends in some other places, and then I did like 3 days in Prague. And the way I just sprinted all over that whole city, riding the subways. I have a very big affinity for public transportation. Any city that I'm in. I mean, I took the Buffalo subway to your house today, because I'm just like, I just hate cars. I hate traffic. I love public transit, and Prague has these streetcars everywhere that are so great to use. The subway was amazing. So I was just like zipping around the city. I also don't like to linger at meals. I like to eat very fast and get on with it. So when I'm on vacation with people, especially people who love to eat, I'm like, oh, good. 2.5 hours of our vacation sitting at this cafe. I mean, I was like shocking the servers in Prague. I was like, sit down for dinner. And like 7 minutes later, I was like, I need the check and I got to go. Hello? I need to go. But I saw so much. I did like some walking tours. I did a bicycle tour. I saw like a string quartet in the old palace. Because I just like hit it and did it, it was so great. Yeah. And it would have been fun to have someone there, but I was like, I really enjoyed it. So does that surprise you? My question to you is does that surprise you?
As someone who's vacationed with you before, no. Okay, okay. No, I'm very happy that you went alone. It sounds like it was great. And that you spared someone. But you know what? Traveling alone is a gift. Mm-hmm. I do love traveling alone. I do. I am hoping to plan a little weekend in Philly alone, because I've been wanting to see the city, and there's so much fun to explore, and it's so close to here. Mm-hmm. It's so close to Buffalo. So I'm trying to do a little getaway to Philly soon, but I think everybody should travel alone. Mm-hmm. Even if you can't travel, like go to dinner alone. Mm-hmm. Go sit at a bar somewhere. I used to do that when I lived in New York. I'm a New Yorker. For 5 months. I remember there was this like tapas place. Tapas? Is it tapas or tapas?
I say tapas.
Tapas. I don't know. Okay. Well, we're going with tapas for now. There was this tapas place right across from my dorm, and I would go with a book and I would sit at the bar, and I became friends with the bartender and the owner, and I would eat just the most delicious tapas, and it was so great. I freaking loved that. I loved it. I'm going to implement that again. Last question for you.
Yeah.
Will the Bills win the Super Bowl in 2024?
I don't care. I'm so sorry. I don't care. No, I don't. Although let me tell you, I'm changing my stance on this. For a while, I was very pretentious about this, believe it or not. And sort of like, had this feeling that nothing is worthy of your undying attention. I feel like kind of about anything. And so with sports, I'm like, I think I'm totally on board with the idea of like a fair weather sports fan. Like, it is not, I don't think it should be expected that you like go and watch your team lose all the time. Like, that's a lot of money. That's no fun. You feel sad. Sports to me, and this is where I've changed a little bit, is partially, I will say, entertainment. So if it's not good, like, don't go. So I love that the Bills are good. But I will say from afar, now not living in Buffalo, and especially thinking about a lot of the topics we already talked about, and sort of having these bigger questions about, like, you know, we really have lost some sense of community just across societies. Like, I mean, I live in, you know, this apartment building in New York that we've lived in for 4 years, and I know the neighbor across the hall only because like our doors open into each other and we like have bumped into each other enough that it was like, I guess I should say hello. And she's so lovely, and it's really nice to have her. But like so many other people, I'm like, we're so close to these people and I have no idea who they are. So I have recently come around to see that, watching, especially again from afar on social media, like the way that the city rallied around the team this year and the last couple years, I was like, I actually think there's like civic good. And again, I'm not the first person with this, but I'm appreciating it maybe myself for the first time. So whereas I was like, it's just entertainment, and if they're not, you know, I'm not going to give up my attention to this thing that might make me happy, make me sad. I'm not going to give them all my Sundays. Like, call me when they win. And no one called. Well, they didn't win, I guess. Maybe that's why no one called. But I am softening to the idea of like following again and appreciating that it is more than just entertainment, and it is more than just like sports. Like, and a lot of queer people love sports, a lot of queer sports leagues. So I played on one, actually. I played on a kickball league, a gay kickball league in Atlanta. I was the star player. I was not the star player. See, I'll do my own fact checks. I will lie to you, and then I will tell you I'm lying to you right away. But I don't know if the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl because nobody knows. Is that okay?
I'll allow it. That's it for today, folks. We have Indian food waiting for us. I hope it's still warm. I do have a microwave, though, so that's good. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I'm going to refill my glass of wine, and I'm going to enjoy this food, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Bye.